everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of the Production Diary here at Ratliff Mandolins. And I would like to discuss how I expect the workflow to go around the shop this week. In this batch of mandolins that I'm building currently, I have 7 of them that are pretty much in their late stages of construction. They all just need basically a fingerboard to be completely assembled, and then I have 3 of them that are in their early stages of construction. So this week my intentions are to take the 3 and do as much as I can to get them into a spot where I can just do a little bit in the mornings. And in this particular instance, I mean gluing on a piece of binding. So I glue on a piece of binding, and then I'm free to work on the other 7 for the rest of the day. Now, I'm going to start my Monday morning by going into the big room and putting the second piece of inner wrap binding on the R5 master model, and then I'm going to do whatever I can do to these overhaul mandolins and getting the binding pieces started and or working on whatever embellishments I want to put around the sound hole. Both of these oval holes are Country Boys, which by the specs don't have any fancy embellishment around the sound holes. But I don't get to do these on a regular basis, and I kind of enjoy the challenge of some little purfling like strip around these things. And so I'm going to, in addition to the binding job, I'm going to do something a little fancy around the sound hole. And I've done this on virtually every oval hole that I've ever made, and it's never been the same pattern. It's always been something just a little different from the one before. So I'm going to spend my week doing just that very thing. I'm going to come to work every morning, wrap a piece of binding on that master model, do something to both of those oval holes if I can clear the jig space, either do something around the oval holes or just plain old wrap the binding on them. And then anything that's left over at the end of the day, or any time that's left over at the end of the day, I will spend on the other 7 mandolins in the batch. I guess you figured it out by now, but when you're doing this for a living, you kind of try to plan your workflow out so that the things that need to be glued up are taken care of every day, and especially those jobs that require several little different gluings. Go ahead and get those done, and then you're free for the rest of the day to work on whatever else needs to be worked on. So there's a tiny bit of insight on how I plan my work day, and therefore the work week is kind of always dictated by that as well. And so follow with me this week. I'm going to just, as always, carry the camera along with me. If there's anything that's worth noting, I'll take some video of it and share it with you. And as I look around here, I noticed I'm right back in the same room I started in, ain't I? Well, I've pretty much been at it all day, and my accomplishments are 2 more pieces of inner wrap binding on the R5 master model, and both oval hole mandolins now have the sound hole all cleaned up, and the whatever decorative treatment we're going to put on it has been applied. There's a piece of binding around the inner part of the sound hole actually, and then the little rosette or purfling strip that you, whatever it is you want to call it, has been installed. And I've used 2 different kinds of material for that, for 2 different effects, just because. So I've got, it's pretty late in the day, and I've got students showing up here in just a few minutes, and so I'll be right back after it again tomorrow. It is Tuesday morning, and I have already wrapped one piece of inner binding on the R5 master model, and now I'm cutting the binding channel on this oval hole. And I've run into this piece of wood, and I've run into wood like this before, so I thought I'd just stop and make note or an interesting comment on this type of wood. This spruce here has really wide growth rings, and the difference between the summer growth and the winter growth, or the color differences, is very distinct. It's a very dark line, and then a light line and a very dark line, comparatively speaking to a lot of other spruces. So the dark line is really hard, and the lighter line is pretty soft. So you're constantly chattering as you run your chisel or gouge or whatever it is that you're working with. You go pow, 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 pow. As it hits those hard spots, it'll stop, and then it'll jump to the soft spots. And the wider the grain, and you'll have a lot of people will actually swear up and down that a wider grained mandolin sounds better than a very tight grain. And you can see on this one, it's tighter here than it is right here, tighter right there than it is right here on the edge. So it just kind of varies depending on what kind of environment the tree had to grow in that summer that it created that ring. So anyway, just thought I'd stop and make a comment that this is a very difficult piece of wood to get a nice smooth binding channel on by hand. Your machine tools seem to run through it pretty easily, but by hand it's very chattery, and lots of times they're just wavy and stuff. So I just thought I'd mention that as a little lesson in wood. And that's about all I can do today, but as far as binding glued on those mandolins is concerned. I've got one piece of binding glued on the R5 master model and a piece of binding glued on one of the oval holes, and that's pretty much all I can do. So I have got about an hour before I'm expecting visitors today. So I'm going to take mandolin number 1 in the queue, which is a left-handed country boy, and I am going to dig out the left-handed fingerboards and clean this top off all the way down to 220 grit paper in preparation for making and gluing on the fretboard extender. So I'm going to spend the rest of the day working on this mandolin number 1 in the back. Now that is exactly what I did yesterday afternoon. I spent the rest of the day sanding on this. What I didn't realize when I was talking to you yesterday was just how rough this thing was. The heel button hadn't been carved at all. The scroll had been carved out but not sanded any at all. All around the edges here needed to be worked down on the back. The sides hadn't been sanded at all, and I haven't even got to that yesterday. I cleaned up mostly the back and the heel. So it is now Wednesday morning, and I'm going to follow the same procedure. I'm going to go into the big room and glue on a piece of binding each of those 2 mandolins, the R5 master model and then the oval hole that's in the binding jig. And then I'm going to pick up where I left off on this and work until I do have a fretboard extender. So I have finally got this F-style left-handed mandolin to the point of where I'm ready to move on. I've sanded the back and the sides and down to 80 grit, 100 in some places. The top's been taken down to 220 grit. The neck heel is all cleaned up and pretty and sanded. And so it's taken quite a while, but I'm finally done and ready to move on to the next step, which is to fit this blank fretboard extender to this thing. And I have a left-handed fretboard, and we're going to basically just fit everything together so that the fretboard lays on top of the neck and the fretboard extender. And so that's the next step. And I'm sure that'll take the rest of the day. So here's the fretboard extender. It has been shaped and fitted and stained, and I'm going to shoot a clear coat on the underside of it, and that way that much will be kind of locked in, and hopefully we'll be able to glue this fretboard extender on tomorrow. And if that's the case, then we should be able to glue the fingerboard on Friday, but we'll see how that goes. It is now Thursday morning, and the workflow battle plan hasn't changed. It's the same as it has been all week. A piece of binding on this mandolin, a piece of binding on this mandolin, and then we'll go in there and work on that left-handed mandolin in an effort to do as much as we can to be able to glue that fretboard on. Here I go. And here's the first piece of outer binding wrapped on the R5 master model, and the next to the last piece of binding on the first of the oval hole mandolins. One more piece and it'll be done. And the fretboard extender on the left-handed F-style here that we're just about ready to put the fretboard on. Now that's going to be about all the mandolin building for Thursday, because Bonnie says that we got to go to town, we got some errands to run, and we got to get up there before the banks close, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to close out Thursday's video shooting, and I'll see you tomorrow. Well, it's Friday afternoon, not too far from quitting time. It's not been the best of work days. I didn't get a whole lot done. I had a lot of interruptions and trip to town to pick up something, and it's just been one of those kind of work days. But indeed, I did get to do the three major things that I've had on my list all week. I got 2 pieces of binding on the R5 master model, and the last piece of binding on the first of those oval hole F-styles. And as far as this left-handed F-style goes, I did not get as far as gluing the fretboard on because I forgot all about it when I was talking about it before. I forgot that I have to glue the truss rod in. And so I've got the truss rod now installed with the little wooden strip covering it over. So it will be ready to have the fretboard put on Monday. And whatever happens on Monday will just have to be part of the next video. So come back and join us then for the next episode of the Ratliff Mandolins Production Diary. My name is Audie. We'll see you next week. Bye.